Okay, so uh, I'll now start a practice test and see how much I can score. Wish me luck. Start. Okay, this is what read aloud. The course. Okay, the course includes an extensive unit on climate change and requires all students to read the Stern Review on the economics of climate change, which was published last year. The course dwells delves into the science behind the issue, the climate, the challenges it poses to business and government, as well as discussion of possible solutions. Okay. The course includes an extensive unit on climate change and requires all students to read the Stern Review on the economics of climate change, which was published last year. The course delves into the science behind the issue, the challenges it poses to business and government, as well as discussions on possible solutions. In the fast changing world of modern healthcare, the job of a doctor is more and more like the job of a chief executive. The people who run hospital and physicians physicians practices don't just need to know medicine. Okay. They must also be able to balance budgets, motivate a large and diverse staff, and make difficult marketing and legal decisions. Okay. In the fast changing world of modern healthcare, the job of a doctor is more and more like the job of a chief executive. The people who run hospitals and physicians practice don't just need to know the medicine. They must also be able to balance budget, motivate a large and diverse staff, and move difficult marketing and legal decisions. Not too good. Okay. Environmental problems caused by hard rock mining involves water pollution by metals themselves, chemicals used in processing, acid drainage, and sediment. Metals and metal-like elements in the ore of are toxic and bound to cause trouble by ending up in nearby streams and water tablets as a result of mining operations. Okay. Okay. Environmental problems caused by hard rock mining involves water pollution by metals themselves, chemicals used in the process, acid drainage, and sediment. Metals and metal-like elements in the ore are toxic and bound to cause trouble by ending up in nearby streams and water tablets as a result of mining operation. Okay. In the recent years, there has been one or two significant happenings that have kept alive the hope that the deep sea may conceal strange links with the past. Okay. In December 1938, off the southeast tip of Africa, an amazing fish was caught alive. A fish that was supposed to have been dead for at least 60 million years. Okay. What's difficult here? Significant happenings. Okay. Ready. In the recent years, there have been one or two significant findings that have kept alive the hope that the deep sea may conceal strange links with the past. In December 1938, off the southeast tip of Africa, an amazing fish was caught alive. A fish that was supposed to be have dead for at least 60 million years. Concentrate in multilingual. Oh my god, I forgot the notes. Okay, that's fine. In multilingual countries, code mixing, the use of more than one variety in the same utterance. Concentrate. Multilingual countries code mixing, the use of more than one variety of same utterance or sentence, and code switching, the use of con man. In multilingual countries, code mixing, the use of more than one variety in the same utterance of sentence, and code switching, the use of different languages or varieties between sentences is common and natural. Despite its frequency, or perhaps because of it, some scholars and self-appointed graduates of linguistic morality view both code mixing and code switching as a sign of linguistic deficiency. Okay, in this landmark account, first published over 20 years ago, mhm, the author argues that the ignorance and lethargy of the poor are the direct results of whole situation of economy, social and political domination. By being kept in a situation in which critical awareness and responses are practically impossible, the disadvantages are kept submerged. Okay, in the landmark account, ignorance, domination situation. In this landmark account, first published over 20 years ago, the author argues that the ignorance and lethargy of the poor are the direct results of the whole situation of economic, social, and political domination. By keeping a situation in which critical awareness and response are particularly impossible, the disadvantages are kept submerged. Okay, what is this? Repeat sentence.
Students must observe lab safety regulations at all times.
Students must observe lab safety regulations at all times.
It's the words of common occurrence that have different referential value.
It's the words of common occurrences that have different values.
The office said Dr. Smith will arrive later today.
The office said Dr. Smith will arrive later today.
Student Services provides help with housing and transport.
Student services provide help with housing and transport.
A study skills seminar is on for students who require assistance.
A study skill seminar is on for students who require assistance.
Any textual references you make should be cited appropriately in the footnotes.
Any textual references that you make should be sorted appropriately in the footnotes.
The research paper should begin with a thorough review of the literature.
The research paper should begin with the thorough review of the literature.
The aesthetic implications of this study have not yet been fully explored.
The aesthetic implications of this study has not yet been fully explored.
The inherent tension between these two features remains to be addressed.
The inherent tension between these two features remains to be addressed.
Journalism is the collection and publication or transmission of news.
Journalism is the transmission or publication and transmission of the news. Okay, 24 seconds. Describe image. Largest cities worldwide. Millions, 1950, 2000 and 2015. London, Tokyo, New York. In 2050, the largest city, the population increased. Okay. This graph illustrates the population of largest cities across world between the years of 1950 and 2015. The first three bars indicate the city population of London, Tokyo, and New York during the year of 1950, where London had 8 million population, Tokyo had 17 million, and New York had 21 million. We see that London's population has remained steady, but in 2015, Delhi had 12 million people living, and overall, it's across the globe. Bad, too bad. पूरा देखना किलो कैलोरीज पर डे. Okay, kilocalories consumed. Africa is steadily increasing. uh, North America is a plunge. Okay. This graph illustrates the kilocalories per day consumed by a few people during the years of 1975 to 1995. We see that across the given period, Africa has shown a steady improvement in consumption of food in kilocalories. We see that after 1990, Western Europe and Central Asia have plummeted. Overall, these four regions represent the entire world, and in the world, the steady glow of food happens. Too bad. Okay. Injury location: home, work, roads. Okay, where is the injury happening? At home or work or roads? School children, leisure. Okay, when they are in school. Okay, overall it's more at home itself. Yeah. This pie chart indicates the amount of injuries happening for children at various locations. It represents that 41.4% of the injuries that are happening at home. At school, there are, a percentage is very less, which is 4.8%. The number of injuries occurring at work is considerably higher than the injuries occurring at other locations. Overall, it is seen that the combined effort of injuries happening outside of home are more in number. Okay, population growth and projected population of Sydney 1976 to 31. So it is 3 million to 4 million, and then 5 million 3,000, which is more in projected. It's in millions. It's a steady growth. The given line graph represents the population growth and projected population growth of Sydney from the years 1976 to 2031. The graph represents that in the year of 1976, Sensex indicated the population of city of Sydney is approximately 3 million, and while it is 4 million in 2001, the projected population of the city Sydney is 5,030,000, which is indicates that it's a steady increase from 1976 to 2031. Overall, the population is growing steadily. Okay, okay, too much. Three towers: Taipei, Taipei Tower, Petronas Towers, Kuala Lumpur, Sears Tower, Chicago, Taipei. Okay, 1670. This beautiful picture represents three different towers across the globe. The first one is from Taipei, and the name is Taipei 101. The second tower is from Kuala Lumpur. The name is Petronas Towers 1 and 2. We have two towers here. And the third tower is from Chicago, and its name is Caesars Tower. Caesars Tower stands at 1450 feet. The Petronas Tower stands at 1483 feet, and the Taipei Tower is at 1670 feet. Overall, the tallest is Taipei Tower. Okay, this is a line graph. There is a lot of fluctuation. 2002, there is a plummet or a drop. and after that it is increased constantly 100%. What is this? Manufacturing output in UK percentage. Okay. The graph indicates the manufacturing output in the UK. It represents in percentage what was the output during the years of 1999 to 2007. We see that there is a good increment or a rise from 1999 to 2001, and then there was a steady drop. In 2002, however, we see that there is a dramatic drop in the output of the UK company manufacturing. After 2004, there has been a steady increase to 2007. Overall, we see that the output has been constant. It was not constant. कुछ भी बोलो.
Milk is not typical of all monasteries for many reasons. First, it is very grand, which most, especially later foundations, aren't. Secondly, it was founded in the countryside, whereas in the 17th and 18th centuries, a good proportion of foundations were made in towns. Thirdly, it still owns a substantial amount of land, because fourthly, it lies in the Austrian Republic, the only European country where grand old monasteries have been in continuous existence since they were founded, 900, 1,000, even in one case 1,200 years ago.
Okay, क्या बोलना है? Okay, Austria Foundation. Milk. Okay. The picture represents a milk foundation. The speaker was talking about its foundation, and he mentioned that it was a grand build. He also suggested that it was built in the countryside. He then mentioned that many of the foundations were first done in the town, and he also mentioned that in European countries these foundations and many other similar foundations have been in numbers of 1990s and 2000s. Overall, the foundations have been very great and significant.
Corruption comes at a huge economic and social cost, and that cost is felt most acutely by the world's poor. Dr. Arnold has already given the staggering figure of $1 trillion US that's paid in bribes worldwide. It is an extraordinary figure. It's a figure that equals 10 times what is paid each year by donors in international development assistance. 10 times development assistance. And even this huge amount, $1 trillion, could be an underestimate because it's very difficult to capture a number of the more elusive transactions within the public sector that involve corrupt dealings, such as budget leakages and asset theft. Corruption sharpens income inequality, and it impacts disproportionately on the poor. In many countries, corruption works as a regressive tax on household incomes. Regressive because it impacts much more on the poor than the more wealthy. Compared with higher income groups, lower income families pay a much larger share of their incomes in bribes to access basic public services, and their overall access to those services is reduced.
Okay. The speaker was talking mainly about corruption. He first suggested that the overall corruption throughout the world is about $1 trillion. He then mentioned that this amount is 10 times more than the amount of funds put into international development assistance. He later suggested that this $1 trillion amount could be a lower estimate than what could be the real value because not everything is recorded. He then mentioned that the poor suffers the most and pays most on the housing taxes and put a lot of money into bribes and gain the least.
This is Hans Krebs, who in 1937 published a paper showing the sequence of chemical reactions by which energy is released in individual cells. It's called the Krebs cycle, which some of you may remember from your chemistry course in high school. Krebs is a wonderful example to me of how a scientist who is determined can overcome all kinds of human obstacles. Krebs' father constantly discouraged him and told him that he had just mediocre intelligence and would never do anything important in his life as a teenager. What Krebs remembers in his memoir, his father said to him, "You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear." And later on, when Krebs studied with the great biochemist Otto Warburg, Warburg also told him the same thing, not the same quote, but that he had only mediocre ability and would never be a great scientist. And we all hear about how important it is for parents to encourage their children, but sometimes the children will go on to do great things no matter what we say to them.
Okay. Hans Krebs. The author was talking about Hans Krebs, a great scientist who went on in his life to do great achievements. He first suggested that Hans Krebs has discovered a chemical reaction which happens in an individual cell level. Maybe we remember this from our high school education. He first said that his father used to discourage him all the time and always mentioned he would achieve nothing. But later on in his career, he has achieved a lot of things. He also suggested that there is another scientist, Otto Warburg, who was not supporting Hans, but at the end, Hans achieved a lot of things.
To which of our senses do all of the following words relate? Opaque, vivid, brilliant, shiny.
Shiny.
In a recession, does economic activity increase, slow down, or stay the same?
Slow down.
In medical terms, are antibodies harmful or beneficial for patients?
Beneficial.
Would a person suffering problems with their vision consult a biologist or an optometrist?
Optometrist.
Would fresh milk last longer in a fridge or in a cool cupboard?
In a fridge.
Historians use evidence to draw conclusions about the past. Would a contemporary artist's painting of an ancient battle be an original source or a secondary source?
Original source.
What is the subject of study at a culinary institute?
Science. Heart.
Where would you expect to find equipment like microscopes, Bunsen burners, beakers, and petri dishes?
In the laboratory.
What is the name of the field of study that studies the human mind and behavior?
Psychology.
A planet or galaxy that is very distant can be seen with what device?
A telescope. Okay. चिंटू to good. 23 minutes को start हुआ. Okay. 23 minutes is where it started. 33 minutes. Space experts have long worried that orbital debris might one day smash a spacecraft into hundreds of pieces and start a chain reaction, spreading chaos through the heavens. In the last decade, as scientists came to agree that the number of objects in orbit have surpassed a critical mass, they grew more anxious. Earlier this year, the list of debatable objects 4-inch wide or longer reached 10,000. In these, experts If these experts' predictions are right, billions of dollars worth of advanced satellites are at risk. Okay, so what has happened? The number of debris in space has increased. So there is a considerable amount of loss coming in. Okay, so what happened? SpaceX might one day smash chain reaction. Earlier this year, the list of detectable objects was provided a larger array. Okay. Not only one. The number of detectable noticeable ranges number of noticeable orbital debris you started 29. Okay, the number of noticeable orbital debris have dramatically increased during the last decade, which is not only troubling space experts but also would cause severe damage. Severe damage worth many billions of dollars to high-tech satellites. Okay, actually you didn't even mention about the chain reaction, right? Okay, the number of noticeable not only revealing space experts who that think that such debris would cause would initiate a chain reaction which is not only troubling space experts who think that such debris could initiate a uh, massive threat to Earth. Okay. The number of noticeable 4-inch longer or higher orbital debris have dramatically increased during the last decade, which is not only troubling space experts but also would cause severe damage worth many millions of dollars to high-tech satellites in the damaged. Okay, this is all fine. Only who thinks such debris could initiate a massive impact on Earth. Yeah, man, that's it. 1 minute left. The number of noticeable 4 inches long or higher orbital debris have dramatically increased during the last decade, which is not only troubling space experts who think that such debris would initiate a massive impact on Earth, but also would cause severe damage worth many millions of dollars. Okay, I'll do it this way. What is this again? One more. Okay. Okay, a coffee driver. Okay, now it's 33. Okay, a coffee. Okay. A coffee driver in San Francisco has little chance of ever meeting the small scale farmer in some place who may have raised the original coffee bean. Okay, however, if the coffee bean have bought fair trade beans, if the coffee drinker, he or she has made a conscious effort to he or she has made a conscious effort to support the coffee producer with a fair wage. Goods that are certified as fair trade are priced a little higher than the market rate. Okay. with a premium routed to the smaller the trade fair concept aims to bring small farmers a fair price for their products and support sustainable social responsibility production model. Fair trade is thus one of the more beginning phases of globalization, with the potential to connect poor rural producers with global markets besides coffee. Fair trade items include tea, cocoa, sugar, honey, banana, fresh fruits and vegetables, dried fruits, fruit juice, rice, wine, nuts. अरे क्या है यार, ठीक है उनको फेयर ट्रेड तो okay. Fair trade. Fair trade items include this is the slide. Okay. Fair trade. Okay, fair trade products are sold at a higher rate with the intention of sending the profits direct to the farmer. Okay, fair trade items are sold in the markets with slightly raised rates with the thought of redirecting the additional profits directly to the farmers who everyone is a small scale farmer who may have farmers who raised the regional actual items. Fair trade items are sold in the markets with at a slightly higher rates with the thought of redirecting these additional profits directly to the farmer who raised the actual items. Okay. Fair trade items. Items such as coffee beans, okay, we will put this. Items such as coffee beans, cocoa, sugar, honey, bananas, items. Items such as this. Coffee being the core item. Are sold in markets at a slightly higher rate with the thought of redirecting these additional profits directly to the farmers who raise. That's it, yeah. Did you forget anything? Coffee beans are a chance of ever meeting the sponsor from aims to bring small farmers of fair price for their products and support sustainable and social and responsible production method. Okay. Thereby assisting farmers to support sustainable, maintainable and social and moral farming methods, thereby assisting farmers to maintain and follow and maintain moral farming methods. Yeah, that should be it. Fair trade items are sold in the markets at a slightly higher rates with the thought of redirecting these additional profits directly to the farmers who raise the current actual products, thereby assisting farmers to allowing farmers to follow and maintain moral farming methods. Okay, what is this essay, right? Okay, so you got two essays, 38, 39, and I have like already run out of some time. violence portrayed on TV and in the movies leads to an increase in crime in our society. People who allow violent movies are more likely to become criminals. Okay. Portrayed, presented on TV cause any negative implications on Does violence presented on TV cause any negative implications on society? Well, some does violence presented on TV okay. So violence eminently qualified politicians and the government should ensure ensure to maintain lower crime in the city. Which is politicians in the government should ensure to maintain lower crime in the city, which is not introduced by violence shown on TV. In other words, while TV shows do have some violence, that does not mean that people become learn and enact shown on TV into the society. According to the national 3% of people percent of the people 30% or 90% of criminals do not watch television. Thus, it is clear that violence on television, some it is to go. I have to go, but how many vocabulary words have I got? Eminently indispensable, इधर लिखा तो इधर लिखा. Categorically. Categorically share the city which is not introduced. Okay, it is as important for school children to study music and arts and sports as it is for them to become literate and numerate. How far do you agree with this? Okay, how far do you agree with? It is as important for school children to study music, art, and sports and studies, right? Does children be focusing only on science and technology, or should they also consider putting an effort into mastering sports as well? While submit progressively observe the outline that studies alone will allow kids should young kids should focus should focus more on studies than on sports or arts. Other thunderbolt discuss it. This is how sports and arts are equally, if not equally important, critical as studies. We will thoroughly versed how sports and arts are equally critical as studies. Okay, eminently qualified. Eminently qualified graduates not always end up in earning tremendous sums of money through their high-tech jobs. In other words, often students who study well end up not to start part 2. This is reading and yeah, let's hit it. Okay, what problem does the writer say royal visit used to cause? It was difficult to provide appropriate food. People soon began to find them rather boring. A lot of places competed to host. They were expensive. Okay, royal visits are merely temporary interest. They fill the picture of the time, and in the olden days never failed to empty the okay. What problem does the writer say royal visits used to cause? Royal visits are, as a rule, of merely temporary interest. They fill the picture for the time, and in the olden days they never failed to empty the treasury. Difficult to provide appropriate food. Lots of places compete. They were expensive hosts, and in the olden days they never failed to empty. According to the text, what do labor unions attempt to do? Accelerate nations' industrialization, repeal laws that protect workers, reduce the expense of dismissing workers, inhibit the dismissal. Okay. Virtually every modern industry nation has faced issues of job security, whether they have faced these issues realistically or unrealistically successfully. In some countries, this for example, job security law make it difficult and costly for the private employer to fire anyone. Labor unions try to ensure this in many industry and in many countries around the world. According to this, what do labor unions attempt to do? Accelerate? No. Repeal laws that protect? Repeal? No. Reduce the? No. Inhibit the okay. By references to this text, which of the following views of childhood can be obscured by? Which of the following views of childhood can be ascribed to this? Where is this guy? Here he is. And here he is. Okay. Parents have always treasured their children. Children. According to this and his dispatch, children are majorly considered mini adults. Okay. No. It was only okay. According to the text, which of the following do we learn about the sewage work from London? Do we learn about the sewage work for London? Okay, a consequence of a settled existence is that it permits one to store food surplus. Since storage would be pointless if one don't remain nearby to guard the stored food. Hence, but so. and but stored so while. Okay, here. A consequence of settled existence is that permits one to store food surplus, since storage would be pointless if one didn't remain nearby to guard the stored food. Hence, these other hunters have few or no such full-time specialists who instead first appeared in the certain area. But stored food is essential for feeding non-food production specialists and certainly for supporting food. So while some okay, consequence of settled existence is that it permits one to store food surpluses, since storage would be pointless if one didn't remain near to safeguard. A consequence of settled existence is that it permits one to store food surpluses, since storage would be pointless if one didn't remain here to safeguard it. Hence, this have few or no such food specialist. So while some this may occasionally acquire food consumption because they cannot protect it. 30 minutes left, right? 30 minutes left, 20, 30 minutes left, and you have 8 questions. Good. Okay, but I don't know what I did. The common understanding of genius is that you are either born with it or not. Okay, the picture is so that it has come to the way we educate children. Trouble is the thinking is wrong. So if we were able to believe, if we are to believe a growing body of evidence from the cognitive sciences, the picture is to that is demonstrate that is extreme is marked extremely that is so demo is so exactly that is so marked is so defined so enriched so profound. The picture is so profound that it has come to demonstrate the way we educate our children to entrenched define mark. Trouble is the thinking is wrong. Profoundly so, if we believe exactly so, marker so, define so, entrenched so, picture is so entrenched. The picture is so entrenched that it has come to demonstrate that the thinking is wrong, profoundly so, exactly so, markers or defined so. Okay, an individual's propensity to take a risk is influenced by their own experience and that of others. The key feature in risk taking is the balancing of perception of the personality of the perception of the risk and the possible reward, and this balance may be dash of an individual's particular type of reflection, may be a reflection of an individual's particular type of personality. The key feature is the risk taking. In the risk taking is the balance of a perception, balancing of the perception of the risk and the reward, and this balance may be a reflection of an individual's particular type of personality. Okay, a Roman poet this wrote that there is nothing constant in the universe, all ebb and flow. Every shape that's born bears in its all ebbs and flow, and every shape that has born bears in its dash the seeds of change. Every shape that is born bears in its dash seeds of change. Bears in its womb. These words are remarkably consistent when one considers the way life has changed through time as revealed by the leading record, varying record, fossil record, relevant. Okay, a Roman poet this wrote that there is nothing constant in the universe, all ebb and flow, and every shape that's born bears its womb. Okay, the seeds of change. Okay, these words are remarkably consistent, relevant when one considers consistent or relevant. These words are considerably relevant, consistent when one considers the way life has changed through time as revealed by the fossil record. The increased importance of scientific knowledge is in society has led to a dash increase, surprising increase, corresponding increase, realized increase, perceived, corresponding increase, surprising increase. The increased importance of scientific knowledge in society has led to a surprising increase in the respect of scientific evidence. The increase in importance of scientific knowledge in society has led to a dash increasing in respect to scientific evidence, led to a perceived increase. In order to be dash as sound, in order to be considered, in order to be dash as round, really sound, rational, or it is important that a claim is thought to be scientifically founded. In order to be considered, perceived as sound, the rational or considered as sound, rational or valid. In order to be valid, considered, perceived, right? It is vital that a rational or corresponding, rational or record, rational background, rational position, rational realized sound or valid. We give claims dash by science. Give claims backed up by science more credibility than we allow other kinds of claims, and anyone with produce to sell, products to sell, or claim without the universe to make will seek to support their position with scientific evidence. Anyone with a product to sell or claim with the universe to make will seek to support their corresponding record. Okay, you have like 5 and 20 minutes are left. God damn. The wondrously intricate tile mosaics that adore medieval island architecture discussing a mastery of geometry not matched in the West for hundreds of years. According to a new research, for a long time historians have assumed will be assume that sheer hard work with the equivalent of a ruler and compass allowed medieval craftsmen to create the now a hard research has that more than argues more than more than 500 years or long before gained a good understanding of geometry mathematics in the Muslim world. In the Muslim world met Islamic world met up with the artists and began creating far more complex tile structures that culminated in what mathematics would call which did not appear are made by fitting together a set of shapes into patterns that flow or repeat. If an architect published this report finding a set of an article published by this report in an article published by the journal this report finding a set of polygon shaped tiles that dash into the distinctive pattern that in the article published by journal Science this report finding a set of the styles that dash into distinctive patterns found that set of polygons that have been arranged into distinctive patterns. put large parts of population and agricultural land under threat of severe war. Okay, South India will be the most vulnerable to climate change because of their large coastal population. Okay, the past year has offered me an incomparable chance to catch up with biologists to find and fill in gaps in my methodology. The past year offered me an incomparable chance to catch up with biologists to fill the gaps in my methodological dash and understanding methodological to fill in gaps in my methodological and to pick essentials in neuroscience. Methodological repertoires, methodological gamut, and the previous months have been packed with new information and eventually most of it. On the other side, I realized that the dash of ignorance, level of ignorance on which we base our experiment assumption is frightening. Neuroscience is multi-stage clearly, and there is still comes a point when, for example, a molecular biologist cannot achieve his goal because he doesn't know a new imaging technique or geologics before else because she didn't used to the latest cellular data. That's why I sometimes feel discouraged. I'm looking for a needle in the haystack, but the haystack grows bigger. But that's also the fun of science. The dash line, the bottom line. The bottom line is that blessed to have been dash in the spirit was been wrapped, involved, immersed, enveloped, enfolded. I was blessed. I was blessed to have been wrapped in this last year, enveloped in the spirit, immersed in the spirit, enfolded in the spirit. 10 minutes left. 2 questions. Good. One of the craziest ideas for dealing with global warming is to sprinkle the oceans with iron fillings. One reason the sea is not covered with plants is that it lacks dash nutrients. And iron theory goes, and you will promote the growth of algae. This will soak, engage carbon dioxide from atmosphere and then conveniently sink when it soak. Observe. Thus, over the course of few decades, the concentration of the gas in the atmosphere will return to pre-industrial levels. The law of unintended senses argues against doing any intended doing any such things. Argues against doing any such thing of however an experiment carried out a decade ago in South which is that the underlying idea is sound and an influence suggested that a more evident version, more plain version of the fertilize the oceans project might indeed help to stop climate change. More reserved version, modest version, more plain version, more evident version, modest version. It is not that the idea of a man It is not that the idea of a man as an individual is more or less misleading than the view of him as a member of the group. Okay, it is not that the view of a man is it is not that the view of a man is man as an individual is more or less misleading than the view of him as a member of the group. It is the attempt to draw a dash between the two which is misleading. Draw a link. It is not the view of a man as an individual. It is not that the view of a man as an individual is more or less misleading than the view of him as a member of the group. Okay. It is the attempt to draw a distinction between the two which is misleading. Draw it is not the view of the the individual is dashed by a member of society or probably of more than one society, call it group, class. The individual is by accident a member of a society or probably more than one. Early biologists were dashed to classify species of birds, beasts and fishes in cage, aquarium and showcase and did not seek to study the living creature in social science today have not yet fully dashed for the prominent. Social sciences today have not yet fully dashed from the primitive stage. Okay. Yeah. It is not in the view of man as an individual is more or less misleading than the view of man as a Okay, break time. Be right back in a couple of minutes. listening.
What is talent? Well, that's a very good question. It's actually a very difficult question to answer. People in the business of writing about this tend to define talent in very different ways. Some define it in a very restricted way to apply only to the people at the very top of the distribution curve, the sort of alphas, the top-rate minds. Some completely in the other direction define it to mean almost anybody in the workforce. It's a synonym for workers, and I think the first is clearly much too restrictive. The second is so broad as to be completely meaningless. I think it does depend on context, you know. If you're in a management consultancy firm, then talent really does mean, you know, high-level analytical ability. If you're in Southwest Airlines, then talent means the ability to be personable and pleasant and crack a few jokes quite often and keep the passengers happy. But more broadly, I think I use the term talent to mean brain power. And I use the term talent worker to mean something like Peter Drucker's knowledge workers, not exclusively, but in general. I think the talent that really matters in the modern economy is the talent to use one's brain, both for analytic and creative purposes.
The speaker was discussing how definition of talent differ from person to person, while some think some restrictively think talent comes by birth. Others Everyone is talented. While some restrictively think talent comes by birth, others say everyone is talented, which is meaningless. The speaker was discussing how definition, right? Definitions understanding of the term talent term talent differs from person to person, while some restrictively think talent comes by birth. Talent comes by birth. Others read that everyone is talented.
Okay, to understand what vitamin D does, we need to understand a central concept.
The function of vitamin D is to maintain blood calcium. You probably think that the function of vitamin D is to maintain strong bones and teeth, but it does that by accident. Its real function is to maintain your blood calcium level in a very narrow range. And the reason for that is if your blood calcium level falls below about 9 milligrams per 100 millilitres, then you're going to get into big trouble and die rather quickly. And that's because blood calcium is important for muscle contraction and nerve transmission. And if you don't have enough of it, you can't contract muscles normally. There can't be normal nerve impulses. And this results in a disease called tetany, where you get these uncontrolled convulsions followed by rapid death. Calcium is also important for enzyme activity and blood clotting.
You mentioned that some the purpose of vitamin D is to not to maintain. You mentioned the purpose of vitamin D is to maintain the levels of blood calcium in a narrow range.
So let us begin by addressing the question of inactivity and obesity in children and youth. It's clear that in children and youth, more and more of them are, by this definition of excess body weight, and we're seeing the prevalence go up. And not only in children and youth, but actually in infants, in tiny babies. 6 to 23 months. Look how over the last 20 or 30 years the obesity rate has increased. Now there's a whole host of issues about how do you define obesity in children, let alone in babies, but we'll not go into that this evening. You look at slightly younger kids, it's the same pattern. And then the 6 to 11-year-olds and even the older children. I mean, this is a phenomenon observed widely around the world, and from babies to children to youth and adults. All you have to do is, if you've traveled to the United States, say a couple of times in the last 20 years, it's very clear that there's an obesity epidemic there. And we're not quite number one, but we're way ahead of you folks. You need to try to catch up and have the obesity rate move up a bit.
Well, the works of Shakespeare have been re-edited about once every 20 years since his own lifetime. That's partly just because as times change, the kind of information we need changes. So, for instance, a generation ago, readers could be expected to understand the allusions to classical mythology in Shakespeare. Now, most kids don't have a classical training, so we need explanatory notes for that. So there is part of the process is simply just sort of polishing things up and keeping the plays up to date. I also was very keen to take this project on because there simply was no edition out there that I thought was satisfactory. Quite often students or parents of prospective students would say to me, OK, which is the edition of the complete works to buy? And I really couldn't put my hand on my heart and say, this is a satisfactory edition. One reason for that is simply the sort of technical reason that nearly all editions are printed in double column, which is terribly hard to read. And most complete works editions don't actually have the explanatory notes on the page. So there were sort of practical things.
Some years ago, Bjorn Lomborg, a young Danish statistician, published a book called The Skeptical Environmentalist. It became a bestseller and generated a lot of heat. Lomborg was attacked, abused and accused of all manner of things, not because he denied the fact of global warming, in fact he affirmed it, but because on his analysis the devil, and he says a lot of deviousness, was contained in the details presented concerning the size of the problem and what were the most responsible steps to take in response to global warming.
I think that's not going to be such a viable option for Cerberus, but that may be the way that they're going to approach it. Private equity, of course, is supposed to have the advantage of taking management out of the spotlight of quarterly profits and industry analysts and prying shareholder eyes, and that hypothetically gives them a chance to take slower, more patient routes to doing something to turn a company around. I would hope, and I have some, I guess, optimism that some of the Cerberus team will have some creativity and imagination.
Equity industry.
There's another thing that's unique about positive psychology as a field of study. Again, it started in 1998. You see, until very recently, the realm of life flourishing, of enhancing the quality of our lives, has been dominated by pop psychology. Now you go to the bookstore and the self-help section, huge, expanding literally by the second. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of books on the topic. You open these books and what you see, very interesting, charismatic writers, good writers, but often, not always, but often very little substance. Then you go to academia. You enter a library, you open the academic journals. What you see there, a lot of rigor, strong empirical foundation, science. But on the other hand, not accessible. Most people don't read academic journals. What positive psychology does is create a bridge between the ivory tower and Main Street, bringing the rigor, the empirical foundation, linking it to the accessibility, making it accessible to students in college, to the general public.
Okay, despite the increasing interest in popular self-help books among the general public, academics say no need to attempt to popularize their own writing. They argue that positively
The neurons in the brain cells, are like electrical cables, and they've got a layer of insulation like the rubber or plastic around electrical cables. It's a layer of fat called myelin that enables the nerves to transmit impulses properly. What the petrol does, it's fat-soluble, and it just dissolves that insulation layer. So basically there's no sort of protection around the neurons, and slowly the neurons themselves shrink as well. And it makes you feel good, makes you emotionally feel better, strong, tough, smart. So the messages can't get around the brain and the body so well anymore. But the damage seems to follow a process. The thinking, the executive function, the more complex thinking is affected first, then the memory and the learning, and eventually the movement centers of the brain are affected. And that's when there's more serious impairment and probably less chance of recovery.
And one of the major lessons that we've learned is that diversity masks unity. And what I mean by that is that we are so attuned to noticing differences between things, and even differences between people, for example, because it's a tremendous survival advantage for us to recognize a lot of different people and know which ones are our friends and which ones are likely to stab us in the back. It really, really allows you to human beings to prosper. But that keen awareness of diversity actually masks some extraordinary, remarkable unifying principles in living organisms.
Unity can mean a failure to recognize diversity in things and people. A theory showing unity causes different species remain unproven.
There are places on the moon near the poles where the sun never gets very high. It just sort of rolls around the horizon, and if the crater rims are tall enough, which is the case for already known craters, the sun never reaches the bottom of the crater. So it becomes what we call a water trap, where comets that might have impacted the moon and the like, water molecules can just fall into that and never get warm enough to evaporate out. And so as dry as the moon is, it may have substantial amounts of water trapped at the bottom of these craters. One interesting invention might be some device that reaches down into the soil, scoops it up, and sucks the water molecules out of it and drips it into a cup. And at the other end, you separate the hydrogen from the oxygen. That gives you rocket fuel. So the same machine that gives you the cup of water gives you rocket fuel on the other side. That's kind of an interesting device, if someone could invent that, because then you take it to the Sahara and extract water out of the sands of the Sahara. I mean, imagine the kinds of things you can do with the technology that enables this.
What does the speaker indicate about the device he describes? Its useful would be limited. It is commonly called a water trapper. It requires a significant amount of fuel. It has not been invented.
Winston Churchill was 65 years old when he became Prime Minister in 1940, at a most critical time in English history. He was 80 when he resigned after his second period of premiership. Many other leaders, including presidents of the United States and dictators such as Stalin, have been leaders in their late 60s and 70s. This is particularly significant given that most of them suffered from serious illnesses. Even now, many politicians at both central and local level continue in office well into old age. There are other leadership areas where older people continue into older age. For example, in academic life, where writers and lecturers continue to act as intellectual leaders well into their 90s. In industry too, some leaders show
So often when we say the word activist, it creates this little box in our mind that certain people can fit in and other people cannot. And one of my experiences, or I guess one of my lessons from the various experiences I've had over the last few years, has been that every choice we make has an impact on the world, including when we choose not to do something. And because of that, then, if you look at it, we don't oftentimes see the results of our choices right away, and so we think that it might or might not make a difference. Like, what does this one choice really mean in the grand scheme of things? But because no choice happens in a vacuum, every choice has impact. And because of that, then truly we are all activists, because every choice we're making is creating.
Well, there's a positive obligation on the bank to ensure that the people who are signing a loan guarantee know what they're doing. Loan guarantees are kind of unique in that someone is giving security or a guarantee and placing themselves at risk for someone else, and they receive nothing material in return. So you've got to ask yourself, why is this person doing this? Do they know what they're doing? They're risking a lot and not really getting anything back for it. So the imperative is that the bank must ensure that these people know what they're doing and that they fully understand the implications of what they're doing, and they know that their properties may be sold if another person doesn't meet their obligations.
For some people, this proposition may seem far-fetched, but ending poverty is both morally necessary and actually feasible. All of us must play a role in making it happen. All human beings want and have a right to live in dignity, to determine our own destinies, and to be respected by other people. Despite the universality of these rights, our capacities to fulfill them vary enormously. And no dividing line is more profound in influencing the quality of our lives than the gulf between poverty and prosperity.
It's in financial companies' interest to have people save more money.
It's in financial company interest to have people save more in financial companies.
Further research should establish whether this trend is significant.
A gradual increase occurred between October and December.
Okay, so what will be our score? Let's see. Okay, it come in few minutes. Okay. Overall 77. Listening was good. Speaking was good. Writing was closed, but looks like spelling mistakes and written disclosure did not work out well. Need to work on these two. This was good. Oral fluency, pronunciation. Wow, good. I thought I made a lot of mistakes in speaking. Yeah, listening was fairly fine. Grammar was good. Spellings, oh god. Okay. So this is the score, and we should get above 79. Should not be a problem. Should not make spelling mistakes. Work on improving written discourse. What happened here? Too bad. Too bad. Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's see how well our essays were and where we went wrong. And that's why I copied those essays. So this was the first essay. Oh my god, television. Oh my god, seriously? Oh my god, these are all fundamental mistakes. Four spelling mistakes. Bad. Bad. Anyways. Yeah. Okay, obviously there are some mistakes which caused my writing to drop. Society television. Oh my god, too bad. A couple of grounds. Does violence presented on TV cause any? Present on TV. In revealed as revealed in. Okay, I did not understand it. I should not have used a short form there. Bad phrases. What are my bad phrases? We, some, well, do, mean, does, is, and. So I should be using better words here. That is one problem. Transition 64. This is good. I used good transitional phrases. That is good. Length is also good. Average length 19. Passive sentence. Okay. Okay, this is good. Okay, so there is a lot of variety in this style of writing, which is a good thing. Vocab. Outstanding vocabulary. Implications, content, yes. Enact, ideology, undoubtedly, indispensable. All these words, right? Shed, revealed. So they were good. Good vocabulary. How many? Yeah, 13% were vocab words, which was good, but I should have some more. This gives you 89B. 89 is like 89 by 100. It's a B grade. Okay, let's just uh, correct these silly mistakes which I should have not done. Television. Society. Telecast. There is no word called telecaster. There is no word, right? Okay, okay. Okay, let's see now. Okay. Yeah, this so after removing the spelling mistakes which I should not have done, the score goes to 91A, which should throw us over 79. Just because of spelling mistakes, it did not work out. Bad. So that was about the first essay. Let's check the second essay. So the second essay, okay, this is the second essay. Oh my god, there are more spelling mistakes. Consider considerably. So I'm correcting the spelling mistakes because we know they are wrong. Comparably. Okay. I'm going to correct this too. Yeah, corrected the spelling mistakes. Oh, this is a than, THAN. That is wrong. It's a real grammatical error. Children who involve. Let's see what's wrong. Spelling is fine. Daily routine, the daily routine are involved. Healthy, then. Okay. 28 lower. Your score is less than average. This is bad. I should not be using these words. Should be finding alternatives for them. Style, yeah, this is good. Transition words are there. Length, average length is 18.5. It's good. Passive, one passive. Impressive, this one. Different variety in sentences, which is good. vocab. Okay, so this essay had like 12% vocab here, and this gives you a 91A as well. So the bottom line is, had I been using better vocabulary words by replacing these, that's one thing. That would have increased my vocab score further, and had I not committed those spelling mistakes, my spelling mistakes score would have been better. And obviously, if you see, right, this is a blunder. This is like less than 65 because of those silly mistakes. Anyway, so better not to use the words which you really don't know. That's what it concludes. And yeah, so almost everything is above. Let's assume the spelling mistakes are not done. Okay, if that is the case, almost everything is above, yeah, here. And why did I get like less here? See, had I not done spelling mistakes, I would have got above 79. Here probably there were some mistakes done somewhere in the session, reading session. This can only be improved if you get good score in reading, and obviously probably I should have done better in multiple choice or somewhere. Reading session, maybe the reorder paragraphs, I was wrong. That's why. Okay, so let's close here.